Next we've got Michael Wadsley talking about electric aeroplanes. Fantastic. The PowerPoint's back down the bottom there? Yeah. And you pick your one. You're right? Fellow Outlander driver, so he must be all right.
Sorry? Rightio. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Michael.
Well, I think before I start even, yesterday John talked about paper airplanes. Somebody's even got the conversion kit for your paper airplane. You just clip it on. This is a supercapacitor, so you just wind it up and get the thing on properly. Now it's not going to go for me, of course, is it? But anyway, that's the maybe on the small end of electric aeroplanes. But
That's great.
so why aren't we? First of all, for this piece, I'm going to go a little bit over the electric remotely piloted aircraft, and this is just a few examples taken off the website of a major retailer. Main thing I wanted just to point out here is that going to electric with a flying beast, you can get a huge range of possible designs. And as we know, they're already used for imaging, agriculture, military, real estate. You've probably been buzzed by the bloke next door selling his house. And they're also being considered for parcel delivery by people like Amazon, and also for air taxis. Oops. Now, the Chinese have already got on the market an aerial taxi. But this beast is actually already flying and is being tested in the Middle East. So there we have at Dubai, and there it is actually undergoing part of its test flight in Dubai. So that beastie is actually flying. I don't think it passed all their safety tests, despite the first slide about it. But you can do it. It'll carry a single person, a weight of 100 kilos. So, yeah, we do have a remotely piloted air taxi. But under development, we have three particular ones that I don't claim to be exhaustive, but this is what I've come across. And it's interesting to note the sponsors. We've got Airbus here, Daimler, and this other company. The other company's not small. They've got raised $90 million to develop their air taxi. So this is the Vahana concept. You can see that it's a VTOL, vertical takeoff, but in this beast, the wings can rotate. So that when you get to operating altitude, the wings rotate, and it'll fly along like an ordinary plane. And again, thing to note, distributed. Here we have 8 propellers. The Viola Copter concept, which Daimler's a partner of, a little bit like an ordinary drone with a bit bigger basket hanging underneath. And Lilium, who operate out of Munich, have already demonstrated this particular beast in an unmanned configuration. Again, you can see that it has rotating thrusters. So you've got a series of electric motors along here, and these rotate to provide either vertical or horizontal movement. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Dubai actually plans to have these aerial taxis operating within 5 years. But what we're mostly interested in here is the piloted electric aircraft. And in Tassie, we're very, very proud to have had the first electric powered flight in Australia, down in the Coal River Valley, put together by Alan Coates, David Warren Boyle. So that was flying, as you can see, 9 years ago. And when one looks at the how these have progressed, a very much sleeker version that you can go and put your money out over in Europe, twin engine job there. So, as I mentioned, the ultralights, all electric ultralights have been around for about 10 years, and you can buy a new one for less than cost one of those Teslas out the front. Just to put it in, and given the venue, very suitable beastie, a flying nano, a personalised little flying boat. And if you want to get onto the YouTube, you can see this beast actually flying. Again, you can put your order in front. It'll look very nice out there, I think. A vertical view. We've already seen a little of the solar impulse. Again, an all-electric plane, but in this case, very few batteries. And certainly provided some lovely photographic opportunities. That's the route where the plane landed and took off, swapped pilots, and as you can see, it crossed the Atlantic in one go, crossed the Pacific in 2 steps.
What was the island in the middle of this?
That's Hawaii.
Hawaii.
Make a guess, yes. Going from something like the solar impulse, which is nice and gentle, and this is what I would call an E-plane in permanent ludicrous plus mode. This is actually a full-scale engineering mock-up. The beast is due to fly next year. The motors system has already been checked, as has the instrumentation. It has contra-rotating propellers, so 2 electric motors, but one prop goes one way, one goes the other, provides tremendous thrust. And you can see they've even got their emergency parachute system, pilot safety cell, etc. So what you can see, that E-planes have a niche in this particular exercise. If you've got an activity which only requires the plane to be in the air for a short while, they're already here. The specs of that particular flight, for those interested in the technical exercise, you can see that the thrust is actually greater than the all-up weight. It gives a really performance-orientated aircraft.
What sort of time?
Huh?
How long do they stay in the air?
Only about 20 minutes normally. But that'll get you through a pylon race with no trouble at all. So, the areas where we're looking at for the examples I've given up until now are what you might call the fairly exotic. We're getting into real commercial operation now. And again, if you're looking at these particular applications, pilot training, glider towing, skydiving, pilot training, a pilot's mainly up there for about an hour. And so, yeah, you can use an EV for these particular things. Again, a glider, you're just taking it up, releasing it, letting it do its own thing, back to the airport. Skydiving, the same thing. You take the guys up, let them jump out, and you can come back straight back to your airport. And so we actually have real planes that are flying in this region. This is the beast produced by Airbus. It's not actually produced for commercial sale. They're using it as a test bed for their getting into the technology. So another at an air show. But these beasts have actually been flying for quite a while. Now, the Sunflyer is a serious contender in the aircraft training industry. They've produced one version where you can see the solar cell, so when it's sitting out at the airport in the sun, you can actually slowly charge your battery. But this particular aircraft, there's actually 130 odd orders in the last time I looked up their site on the internet. So this is designed for pilot training, and American pilot training people have already taken them up. In Slovenia, the Pestrol, again, is already flying. You can get on your YouTube and see both the Sunflyer or the Pestrol on the YouTube. I'm not going to race into that here now. Just showing you the coupling of the motor through to the prop. The Chinese, of course, are there. And this is, they claim this is the first registered electric aircraft. So if you want to carry two people around the place, you can buy one of these in China. So, the electric aircraft are there. Now this is Siemens. Siemens have done a lot of work in producing a very lightweight, efficient electric motor. And this particular plane has set a climbing record and has also been demonstrated to launch a glider. And again, you can look at that on the internet, on YouTube. I don't think this particular beastie is out there for sale, unlike the Sunflyer or the Pestrel. So there's the Siemens at a press function. And if you want to buy one of those Sunflyers or Pestrels, you can actually go across to Western Australia, and there's a company over there, Electro Aero, who is already an agent for both of those planes. So you can buy them here in Australia. But why these particular aircraft? It's the economics, and who'd have thought? One of these Sunflyers is about half the cost of a Cessna. Its running costs about 1/10 of a Cessna. Avgas is still quite expensive in many places. Electricity is a lot cheaper. Avgas, to the surprise of many, still contains lead in many places. So those little planes buzzing around up there, spraying you with that little bit of lead. And as I mentioned, there's about 130 orders in for the Sunflyer already. What we all really want are passenger aircraft. And it's interesting that NASA are in there. I think the US military would like to think of being able to move people as a people mover. Airbus, we saw their EFAN. An Israeli company, Aviation, have produced a plane called the Alice. A British company, Farad Air, their BHA. Wright Electric are in there. And Zuna. Now, this is actually an unmanned piece, but just to show you some of the concepts that NASA are already looking at. So again, you can see tilt wing, multiple engines. And for those of you who are interested in aviation and airflow, the engines at the end of the wing apparently sit in that little vortex that's out there and greatly increase efficiency. And this particular piece, NASA's Maxwell or X-57, is actually undergoing testing and due to fly next year. You can see that the bigger propellers at the end of the wing are there for cruising, the smaller props are for takeoff. I mentioned the EFAN from Airbus. It's already been used for testing both all-electric and hybrid configurations. Airbus are fairly conservative. They're saying these small commuter aircraft are probably maybe 10 years off. That's an image of the Israeli Aviation's Alice. Again, looking initially at small numbers of people over a short range. This is the niche that people have identified and what they want to get into. And again, you can see the distributed use of electricity enables distributed energy, that you've got a prop at the rear and a prop at the tip of each wing. This is the Farad Air, and it's a triplane going back to the First World War. But they reckon this gives it tremendous manoeuvrability and electricity, short takeoff, landing. You'll see some commonality between these different designs. Right Electric, again, they're talking about giving all electric commuter operation in 20 years. But the real flyer in here is the Suna, in which Boeing and JetBlue are already investors. Only last month they made an announcement where they're expecting hybrid aircraft operation in 2022, only 5 years back off, and all electric operation in another 5. So they're looking at that slower design out there flying in 12 years. They reckon prototypes will be flying next year. So a 10 to 12 seater, a medium range is what they're looking at. And why? Because they're quiet. In America, every city has lots of smaller airports, a bit like, say, Moorabbin in Melbourne or Bankstown in Sydney, where people can't operate larger aircrafts because of noise. Electric, they all become operational. It cuts the total journey on an aircraft by a large fraction. If you don't have to go out to a major airport at the fringe of a city, you can catch one in and get away. So a lot of companies obviously feel they've got a niche market in there. And why hybrids? Well, they just use the battery power for takeoff and climbing, just like a hybrid car like I have. And then the fuel engine generator set is used for cruising power while you're up there in level flight and doing a steady battery recharge. They can operate from a small urban airport. The curfew is removed, and they're much simpler than a hybrid car because, you know, a hybrid car, you've got to go up and down hills, need the battery to go up the hill, you're regenerating coming down the other side. A plane, you're sort of up there, level flight, coming down. And the suggested fuel saving over a full ICE plane is about 80%. Something which doesn't receive much publicity, but just like we heard about in-movement charging of electric cars and buses, so you can charge up a plane while it's going there. We've got a number of energy sources. We've already seen people use sunlight, but you can also use microwaves and lasers and receive that energy in a rectenna or in a photovoltaic cell. Rectennas have been around for a long time now. This is a 1964 photos of, you can see they're very simple structurally, electric motor, propeller, and the beast is up there flying away between a couple of guide wires. They are not carrying the electricity. And there are, of course, modern versions of these because the military have a bit of an interest in keeping up an observation or communications platform. So this is a modern microwave-powered plane. And you say, well, atmosphere, clouds and all the rest, and microwaves, well, there are a number of regions in the spectrum where you can actually beam electromagnetic energy without much absorption. So they're really quite feasible. Laser recharging has been demonstrated by Lockheed Martin using one of their Stalker drones in a wind tunnel. They kept the drone flying in the wind tunnel for 2 days. So, but then miraculously, you don't find anything else much on the internet. And so I think that the military there have decided this is too useful and they're not going to tell us much about it. So just with cars, you've got low range, that the fuel, being a battery, is much heavier due to the battery mass. And unlike a petroleum fuel plane, which gradually loses mass during its flight, it's going to have the same landing mass as when it takes off. But we have quite an interesting list of advantages. The noise is lower, vibration also lower, inside and out, and therefore more airports become accessible, and they're accessible all day. We've got lower fuel costs, as we've seen with avgas. The cost of electricity is about 1/10 that of avgas. The maintenance costs go way down. You've only got one moving part, that rotor, and so I think there's something like 1,000 moving parts in a light aircraft engine, and therefore they don't have to be regularly pulled down and maintained. As we saw with some of those designs, you've got a huge flexibility, you've got simple VTOL possibilities. And you don't need all those flaps or rudders probably in many of the electric planes, because having that multiple distributed propulsion, you eliminate a lot of the control surfaces. And you've also got the possibility of recovery on descent. Some of those training aircraft actually get back about 13% of their energy when they come back into the airport. And higher energy efficiency means that you've got lower cooling needs. That if only 30%, 25-30% of your energy is going into actually turning that propeller, you've somehow got to remove all that heat out of a petroleum fueled aircraft. And if you've got 95% efficiency in an electric motor, then you've only got to remove 5% of that electricity away from the system as heat. Again, you've got no oxygen dependence, so particularly with a piston style motor, where you're continually changing your carburation as you go up, you know, the engines don't have any of that problem. You've got zero or lower 20% or zero carbon containing emissions, and you've got zero lead emissions. And the fuel, most people are familiar with handling electrical systems.
I think you missed one up there.
Sorry?
You missed one for big advantage.
Sorry?
If with a long haul flight, if it turns back early in the flight, it's got to dump all the fuel because it can't land fully loaded.
Yeah.
So you don't have to dump the fuel if you turn back early in the flight.
But we've already got some emerging industry in Australia. Magnets up in Queensland have contracted to develop new motors for electric aircraft. So possibilities for people. So, as I've pointed out, electric airplanes are already here. The use is going to expand, and so prepare for that disruption.
Thanks, Michael. The sky's not the limit anymore.